Okay, guys, welcome back to the Mastery Podcast. I am delighted today to be joined by Olivia Orchowski, who not only is somebody that I've got a lot of respect for her work in the field of female health, but she also is an educator for us in the Complete Coaching Academy. And I was first introduced to your work probably a couple of years ago, and my wife and I had a conversation with you around our journey through fertility, and just realized then that this such a passion and depth of knowledge, and it brought back floods and floods of my memories from functional medicine days. So Olivia, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Great to chat to you. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, look, there's loads of stuff I want to cover, and to those of all the coaches that are listening to this, the direction that we're going to go down is very much female health. That's what Olivia specializes in, and how you guys can become more empowered and educated in these areas of female health. What are the kind of things that you guys should be looking for? Who are the people that you can associate with and work with and get the best for your clients? And as women listening to this podcast, how to empower you so that you live a healthier and happier life in yourself. So there's a lot that I want to cover through this. But I was interested when I did a little bit of background. I didn't know that Olivia was a model in the early days. Is that right?
Yes, it feels like a lifetime ago, and it sometimes feels like when I look at some of the things I've done in my life, it's like a very fortunate life where I've gotten to experience a lot of things. But it feels like a lifetime ago. It doesn't feel like part of my history.
Well, it's funny you say history, right? Because I was reading a book recently, and it was Daniel Priestley, and he wrote Oversubscribed and Key Person of Influence. And he was talking in the book, which I'm a huge believer in not burying our history, because our history shapes who we are. And there's a lot of fitness professionals are like, that's who I was, and now I'm struggling to find my identity. And interestingly, when I did a little bit more digging with you, is that kind of like the modeling at that time really started to get you thinking. And then you went through your own challenging health condition. So talking about not burying your history, how is your history from those days kind of carried you forward, and how does it benefit what you do now?
So I think when we talk about our history, at the moment, when we think of models, the industry has changed significantly. We have a lot of body positivity. We have a lot of fitness models. It's a very different industry to what it was when I was in it in the 2000s. In early 2010s. So in those years, we're talking about really unhealthy models. Picture what you think of models, eating disorders, really unhealthy, rake thin. That's what I was a part of. So that industry, although it gave a lot of lessons in terms of what I don't want to be doing for the rest of my life and what I don't want to be involved in, it also gave a lot of opportunities to meet a lot of interesting people and meet a lot of girls, because they were girls at that time. They weren't adults, not mentally, not physically. And gave the opportunity to meet a lot of girls who were really unhealthy, and they were abusing laxatives, they were bulimic, they were starving themselves. They would be living off maple syrup and lemon water. They'd have cayenne cracker peppers, and because they needed to lose weight. And these girls were rake thin, like there was nothing to them. And it was through those experiences, because at that point, when I was so immersed in that industry, I had already started to have an interest in health and an interest in things like, I'll try this paleo thing, I'll go to the gym, I'll do some workouts. And I was really pushed up against a lot of these young girls who just didn't value the same things as me and were so unhealthy. And it was trying to educate them, where I was like, there's a passion here where I'm obviously trying to help. That was a big thing. And if you look at a lot of my history and where I found myself working, it's all in that helping. But it was just, falling on deaf ears. You didn't want that. They didn't want your help, because at the end of the day, Beyonce did this and Beyonce lost 10 pounds. So I'm going to do the same thing. And you'd be explaining to them how it works. Your maple syrup water is just spiking your insulin. And that's why you have energy. And it was just not interested. Beyonce did it. So it was through those experiences where it did help shape where I ended up going, because I realized I wasn't being fulfilled where I was and I wasn't able to help anyone. And so then it was already an interest in the health and fitness industry, wanted to help people. And what was the fastest entry to that, which was personal training.
Wow. And I suppose during that time, it's funny for me because I had some of my goals in life were to be a fireman. Then I wanted to be a bodyguard. And it's funny because I didn't become any of these. I researched in doing it. I researched into becoming somebody. For me, it was about saving and helping again. Like, and I know, like, these industries or the conversations that you're having with people, but the modeling kind of into personal training, like you were seeing these girls. Were you learning anything at that time about health yourself, or did you just know that you were feeling better than they were? What signs and symptoms were they giving you that made you feel that you needed to try and provide advice?
So at that point, I'd already had a big interest in the health industry. So I was years into doing that hobbyist interest where you're learning about macros and training and programming and, you know, this new movement in the gym and weights and lifting. So, you know, lifting wasn't popular for women at that point. They did cardio or they did like maybe a body pump class, but it wasn't what it is now, right? So I already had an interest in this and like a keen interest, and I was feeling awesome. And I had to get really lean to work in one country. And I got really lean through nutrition and training, not through starving myself. Obviously, I was in a deficit, but it wasn't comparative to some of the disordered eating you see in that industry. And it was like, well, you can actually do this and feel good and feel healthy, and you're not doing it. So that was a big thing for me where I was like, how do you not get it? And I remember one of the key stories I remember actually was one of the girls, the cayenne pepper lemon water girl. She started getting really, really awful skin, like cystal acne all across her face. And I remember saying to her, you have like, you're not eating anything. Like, of course your body is freaking out. And her solution was just to go to a dermatologist and get a steroid cream to fix it. And it was those key moments where I was like, I can't help the women or the girls in this industry. The help they want isn't the help that I can give. And there's other ways to help people. And that's how it kind of moved out from there.
So from there, personal training became your career path. Did you move straight down the female route, or as in like female health route, or did it move into kind of weight loss? You know, I know lifting and being in great shape was key to you. Did it start there, or did you go straight into female health?
No, I didn't start in female health. And this was something that I think a lot of young trainers fall into the trap in of trying to specialize and find your niche, as opposed to going out into the world and just getting as much experience as you possibly can, and also learning what you're good at. So when I first started, I was really obsessed with the idea of being a bodybuilding coach. And then I was really obsessed with the idea of being a strength coach, because there's no women in the bodybuilding industry. There's no strength training coaches that are women. And, you know, now we have more women in the health and fitness industry, but I was hyper-focused on this. And I was working in a commercial gym. I was getting experience out the arse in terms of the client base that was coming to me. And they were all Gen Pop. And nothing wrong with Gen Pop. I think a lot of coaches want to move away from Gen Pop, but realistically, those are the clients that need our help the most. And the clients that kept coming to me were just women who had a lot of issues. And so while I was working with all of these clients that had issues and working through their PCOS and endo and infertility, I was still like, strength coach, bodybuilding coach, like thinking that's what I needed to be, and semi-ignoring for a few years where I was, and not realizing that this was actually the niche. So yes, I was, learning what I needed to learn to help and support them, but it's like I had this fixation on being somewhere else. And it was only when I realized that it was like 95% of my client base were these women who were just really fucked up by other coaches that I was like, okay, this is kind of where I am. And this is actually okay. I'm really interested in this. And we kind of went from there, but it wasn't about specializing in female phys at all. It kind of found me.
Can I ask you, you touched on weight loss and so many coaches desperate to move away from it. I learned so much of my journey through weight loss. And I think people see Gen Pop as like the 2-star of the hotel industry. It's just full of rubbish and crap. And I'm like, fall in love with general population people, because they could be millionaires as general pop, as in like they just want to lose weight and feel better. I think that the physique is classed as like the holy grail, but often some of the hardest clients to coach. But the Gen Pop generally are saying, A, I want your help, B, they're with you longer. But your advice, and I love asking this question to any experienced coach, like, what do you see as the value of the general population community to coaches?
Look, at the end of the day, the general population community is the vast majority of your clients. If you look at how popular the industry is at the moment, how many coaches there are at the moment, it's not to say that you're not going to be able to niche down and be a fantastic physique coach or a strength coach. It's not to say that. But realistically, Gen Pop is where you're needed. The people that need your help the most are the ones who are coming to the gym and need you face to face there. Even with online coaching is this big popular thing now. But the people that need us the most are the ones that are coming into the gym and need to see their PT 2 or 3 times a week. Gen Pop is a wonderful place to be, because it's where you get to enact a lot of change with those clients. You get to see the very, very visual reality of what happens with you intervening in their life, how much healthier, happier, friendlier, how much better they look, how much, they're enjoying life. You get to see all these things. Whereas with physique coaching, it's just... physique competitors are hard people to manage mentally. And if your skills as a coach aren't there, if you're not good at managing those types of personality types as well, like, it doesn't matter that you can get someone lean, you can't manage that client, and you're not going to be able to retain that client because you don't know how to deal with them. So yeah, Gen Pop's a wonderful place to be. I've never understood people who want to move away from it.
You know what's funny about Gen Pop as well? I think people feel like Gen Pop have got some kind of like disability, that they can't train hard, they can't push hard, they can't progress. I've had some of my best housewives and best, middle kind of industry people work with me, who I've progressed them to doing 100K back squats from not being able to come in the gym and stand on one leg. And you watch these people do these things and you're like, I've helped them get there. And now they believe in themselves. They're working harder. They're turning up with their focus, but they're still general pop, And I think people think because you're general pop, because you've had 2 kids, because you've got a busy job, you can't dedicate 45 minutes to an hour in the gym to train hard. And the limitation actually is the coach having the ability to get it out of that person. Do you know what I mean? So I think that look, I'm a physique coach. I train for physique myself. But on the left-hand side, I'm training Gen Pop people, and I have I want to train that type of person that trains like me, but you could actually bring those people up. I think that's an interesting way of looking. Now, obviously the bodybuilding world, the physique world that you were in, brought with it some challenges that you alluded to a few minutes ago, where you said there were so many women that were screwed. Talk me through what you were seeing, because this obviously was catalytic for you in moving into the health sphere. What were you seeing? So to a lot of women out there and guys that are coaching women, what were you seeing that maybe they can't see at the moment? Maybe they've not been in the industry that long. Like, you've been in the industry a good time now. Like, what were you seeing that made you go, I got to intervene here, I got to help?
So I had in my Instagram bio for a really long time, I fixed the clients you fucked up. And so that's what was coming to me for years. And it was the clients that were coming to me were all injured, all had something wrong with their shoulders or their lower back, couldn't lift for shit, had wanted to do a comp or had done a comp and come in actually looking like crap as well, had been pushed way too hard. The coach had no concept of female physiology and what they'd actually done to their clients, trying to put them through that. And they were just in a heap. Like, they were overweight, they were unhappy, they were fixated on getting lean, because that does happen with competitor or clients. Maybe some of them didn't compete, but it does happen with clients when they do get really lean, is when they rebound back to a healthy body fat or just slightly above what is healthy. There's always that fixation of when they were really lean, and it takes a really long time to get out of that. So I was just getting a lot of clients with a lot of issues who were really unhealthy. And it was like, okay, well, something has to change here. Something has to give here. And these coaches just generally didn't realize what they were doing. I like to think that people are good as a whole. I would like to think that a lot of these coaches didn't see anything wrong with what they were doing. They were just not skilled, because I don't want to think that a coach would willingly injure a client's back or shoulder by giving them shit programming. They just didn't know that it was really shit programming.
What is unhealthy in a woman? What does unhealthy look like? Take me through your kind of like, I'm seeing this. This is what I would class as unhealthy.
So the biggest thing that I look at when I'm looking at health in women is their menstrual cycle. So the American Gynecological Society, it recognizes that the menstrual cycle is the 5th vital sign. So for women, we do have our 4 vital signs, but for women, the menstrual cycle is the 5th one. So just like a client who comes in with high blood pressure, which is one of our vital signs, if there's issues with the menstrual cycle, it's on the same par. Like if you had a client who came in with stage 2 hypertension and their heart was about to explode, you'd go, whoa, hang on, this is not healthy.
Of course.
And it's the same thing with the menstrual cycle. So a lot of these women had PCOS, really irregular cycles. They had issues from previous androgen use as well. They had issues from previous performance-enhancing drugs and their thyroid health and integrity. And they had issues with their cycle in terms of not even regularity, but just how heavy or light it was, and not having ovulatory cycles, because we can have 2 different types of cycles. We can have ovulatory and anovulatory cycles. Okay. Anovulatory cycles is where you bleed, but you don't ovulate. So it's like the equivalent of being on the pill, that same kind of bleed. And this is where a lot of infertility and heartache happens for couples, because they don't realize they're having anovulatory cycles. They're like, why aren't we getting pregnant? They're just not ovulating. So it was a lot of that popping up. So those are the markers I look for with women when we're talking about health. And that was what was coming to me with all those clients.
So you've got high blood pressure, irregular menstrual cycle. What's the other 3 that you mentioned? So I think you said was there 5 key kind of health signs that you look for? Blood pressure.
Yeah, so the other 4 vital signs weren't things that I would typically look for, because you're looking at like pulse rate, respiration rate. But those were the 2 things. We're always looking at high blood pressure and the regularity of their cycles, but we're also looking at the how heavy their periods were, how much dysfunction they were having in their cycles. So really painful, if they were having anovulatory cycles, and then what was going on with their thyroid as well. So we would look at a blood panel, but it's not difficult to see when a client is unhealthy and feeling like shit. Like there's a lot of things that you can look at to see if a client's in a sympathetic or parasympathetic state without needing to do 1,000,001 blood tests and stool tests and oaths tests and everything like that. Like one of the things I used to look at with a lot of clients, and this is something that not many coaches know, but if your client is waking up and they can't make like a tight fist with their hand when they wake up, they're waking up too sympathetic. So they're not waking up in a rested state. And that's one of the things that happens a lot of the times. Grip strength fails when you're pushing clients too hard, and they're just in a sympathetic state, too sympathetic of a state. And being in a sympathetic state is good, right, at times, but it's when it's just tipped over the line. So I had clients who couldn't make a fist in the morning, were tired, felt like shit, couldn't get through the day without 2, 3, 4 coffees. And it's like, okay, well, do I need to see your bloods to know that there's a lot going on here and that you're unhealthy? Probably not. But
so I have, imagine I'm a coach. Obviously, we've got 2 ends of the spectrum, and I'll ask you both of these. I'm a coach that I'm working with general pop clients, and I've got a female coming in. And I remember talking about this in my book. A woman comes in, she says, I'm training 6 days a week. I'm doing 30, 40 minutes of cardio. I'm doing a weight training session. I'm managing the kids. I'm taking them to here. Like, what are some kind of signs that a slightly inexperienced coach would look for in a woman coming to the gym, and they go, I want to lose loads of weight. And they go, yeah, cool. Then we put you on a training program, we get cracking. What are some of the physiological signs, psychological signs that a woman may present to you that you can't yet see that would make you go, maybe there's a few things I want to look into here?
So it's a good question, and there's a couple of ways I think of looking at it. The main one that I do think a lot of coaches do need to focus on is the menstrual cycle, and that should be their first thing. Right? You've got this client who's doing all of these things. Talk to me about your cycle. What's going on with your cycle? How long is your cycle? How heavy? Whatever it is. That's the first thing. And then obviously we have a lot of clients who are on some form of hormonal birth control, and that's a different discussion. But that's the first thing. We're looking at the cycle. Next, when we're trying to assess what a client is actually, the state they're in, the thing that we need to think about is their sleep. So a lot of the time when we're looking at mums, particularly mums of young kids, it doesn't matter that they feel good, because the reality is they're not actually recovering because they're not sleeping. We as humans, and this is what we see all the time as coaches, you have a client who comes in and they don't shit. They go to the toilet once a week or twice a week, and then you help them and they start going every day and they go, oh my God, I can't believe I lived like that. I can't believe I thought that was my normal. I can't believe I felt good like that. So it's the same thing. You may have your client saying, I feel good. I'm doing 6 sessions a week. I'm doing cardio. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And then realistically, they're sleeping 5 hours a day, which is sleep deprivation because they're running around after kids. If a woman's postpartum and breastfeeding, there's that to consider as well. But it's looking at all of the things that a lot of women do a lot of the time that are the invisible jobs and the mental burden and mental tax load. As women, a lot of the time, is the fridge stocked? We're always thinking about like the project management of our lives and households. So it's acknowledging that and then looking at what kind of has to give for that to happen. Well, they're not sleeping as well. Their cycle's kind of AWOL. They're doing all of these sessions because they want to get lean. And that's where you'd go from, where actually adding more in or pulling food out isn't going to be the best way to go about managing that client. For the overwhelming majority of your female clients, pulling food out isn't the best way to go.
And obviously this allostatic load, this combined effect of total stress, which, maybe not a lot of coaches really think about. I reference it as the coffee cup, because I believe that a huge amount of the stresses that we live through in life is how we feel in ourselves, our emotional state, and that emotion of whether or not we're good enough, or that emotional state of how much I've got to think about, is fatiguing. It was interesting that, last week my wife had some friends of hers over, and normally on a day-to-day basis it's just me and Marsha, and it's quite a very calm household. And she had 3 friends over, her sister was over, and they spent like 4 days together, and it was all day talking. She came home and she said, I've had a really nice time, but I'm tired. And I was like, because suddenly there's this whole outlay of energy that's completely different to the norm. But I think that coaches, maybe, what you're saying is that, yes, there is the training effect, but then there's the external stressors. And then suddenly as a coach, you lay on this new level of stressor by either pulling food away, which is a load of stress, or by adding in training stimulus. So there's not a conscious thought to the overall loading or adding of stresses that can actually impact the hormonal and the hormonal balance within a female. But what are some of the physiological things that start to happen in a woman? You've got the menstrual cycle starts to become irregular. Moving down the chain, you've obviously got things like PCOS and endometriosis. Like, I'm interested to know, because I know these are affected by from a physique competitor or even to a Gen Pop kind of mom. How does some of these things then start to present themselves as a result of something just getting absolutely, let me ask you this way. Why do these things happen? Therefore, if we've been talking about this stress loader, does that play a big role?
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways we can have PCOS present itself. And this is something that we spoke about at great length with the CCA students, where it's like, okay, let's understand PCOS, let's understand the diagnostic criteria, and let's understand how we kind of categorize it. But now let's look at steroid hormones. And this is the thing that a lot of coaches dabble in steroid hormones and performance-enhancing drugs, and they don't actually understand steroid hormones. And there are experts who spend their whole lives in steroid hormones and still go, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't understand these hormones. But when you actually look at steroid hormones and how they're built, cortisol is a steroid hormone, and cortisol is our survival hormone. And when you start to look at how stressed women are these days, there's a great book called Rushing Women's Syndrome, which I think is a wonderful read for a lot of coaches. But stress isn't just, I had a car accident, I don't have money. Stress is a deficit. Stress is overtraining. Stress is not sleeping. Anything that moves the body from its homeostasis is a stressor. Stubbing your toe is a stressor, right? But it's the ability to get back to that homeostasis. So when I actually look at PCOS and with the understanding of how the androgens become an issue for women with PCOS. If you actually look at steroid hormones and how cortisol becomes the priority, the thing that our body wants to put resources to when we're stressed, everything else gets diverted away from where we actually want it to be going in terms of our hormones, the building blocks. When you look at poor nutrient choices, nutrient deficits, all of that's going to be impacting how our steroid hormones are built as well. When you look at cortisol being high, that impacts the use of glucose. So there's all of these things that happen with our steroid hormones when we're stressed. And unfortunately, what has happened with part of the industry is we get very fixated on just one hormone. You know, estradiol is high. How do we decrease this? Testosterone is low. How do we increase this? And it's a very myopic view when we're thinking about it like that, as opposed to looking at all of the hormones and how they're supposed to work together and how they're supposed to be symbiotic. It's a very myopic view to kind of go, well, great, testosterone is low, let's increase it. Testosterone is high, let's take a supplement to decrease it. You know, why is it high? Well, probably because of stress.
So go on, carry on, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm yet to see a client who manages their stress and has a health issue. And that stress, obviously, management does come from in the intervention of the coach as well, of understanding their mental load, their work, their sleep, and programming, training, and nutrition to work with that to get your client into an optimal state and to be functioning.
So for most coaches, and you know, we're very grateful to have you a part of us in the CCA teaching what we call our 360-degree coaching model. And with that, we have a lot of coaches that go, I need to teach people how to lift and do the biomechanics and program. And it's all about how I can get somebody to add muscle. And then there's this dance of physiology that they have no understanding and concept over. I personally believe that an uneducated coach is a coach who becomes very unfulfilled, because when you're studying every single day, it's probably one of the most fulfilling industries you can imagine being in, because every day you have an opportunity to empower your mind with something new. Even today, you know, 24 years in, I'm picking new things up from you. And I was like, wow. I remember when my wife was, you know, training hard, and she did wake up in the morning and says, I've got no grip. And I was like, boom, there's your answer. You know, and that's me 24 years in. I didn't know that. Right. And so what do you feel is the fundamental? You talked about this dance of hormones. Where does a coach go to? Like, obviously, learning from yourself is one of those. But what areas of education are coaches mainly missing? Is it understanding stress? Is it understanding hormones? What are the main areas which, if we could give a coach a minute now to say, please, when you leave this episode, start delving into these subjects, what would they be?
You know, it's a scary answer to say, because it's a scary word, but having an understanding of biochemistry is really important for coaches. And it doesn't mean that you have to be able to whip this stuff out of your ass and remember every single piece of it. You know, when I go through estrogen detoxification with students, you don't have to remember all of these metabolites. You just have to remember 1, 2, 3. You have to remember how we deal with it. You have to remember what helps move each one along, and you know, you can leave it there. So I think that's a big one, where it's like, don't be scared of biochemistry and digging a little bit deeper, because having that even baseline understanding of biochem is going to be so helpful in terms of what you do as a coach. Because even from a training perspective and a nutritional perspective, biochem will reign king. And that's not to say I'm an expert in biochemistry, not by any stretch of the word. But there's that foundational knowledge and understanding where it was really shit and hard for a while, and you kind of have to dig through it, because at the start everything is overwhelming, and then you start to get that base level of knowledge and you're like, okay, yep, this makes sense. You know, even with blood work, you have a lot of young coaches saying, well, I want to learn how to interpret bloods, and it's like, well, but you don't want to learn anything about biochem, you don't want to learn anything about the foundationals, and you just want to be able to interpret bloods. Or they're asking, what bloods do I get for my client? And it's like, none. Like, you actually don't need bloods. The more you work with clients, the more you realize you don't need them. Great to have sometimes. But yeah, that would be the main thing, where it's like, learn some biochem, get really comfortable being uncomfortable for a while with your knowledge base, and don't stress too much about trying to remember every single little bit, because there's a ton of shit that I don't remember as well, right? But the basis is there. So when the concept's presented to me again, it's like, okay, yeah, this works.
We have a really, really big responsibility as coaches. Like a body, organs, cells, nerves are presenting an energy, are presenting themselves to us in a consultation room or online and saying, I need your help. And I provide you with a workout program and some advice based on the things that you put in your mouth. And we don't consider eyeball to toe. We don't consider cells and organs. And we don't consider how all the nutrients that we're putting in impact the hormonal dance that goes on, and then the output that's presented in our energy, mood, love, health, and emotions. And I think that for me became a bit of a light bulb moment where I became responsible for the human being that was paying me. And with that, you then find it a responsibility to learn the biochem. When you learn the biochem, you realize how much of a difference you can make. And therefore, we'd be having so many more fitness professionals in the world making a bigger difference, as opposed to them believing that the difference they're making in the health industry is just how somebody looks. And I think that leads me very nicely into the physique world. And I know there's going to be a lot of people listening or watching this episode going, no, I'm the one that does the physique. Where are physique coaches screwing women up? Episode honestly, 1 of 10.
It's hard to say this without coaches feeling attacked or getting straight away on the defensive. But I actually don't believe that the overwhelming majority of women belong in the physique world. Women, and it's not this is just for men or anything like that. Absolutely, women belong in sport. But when you look at the differences between performance in something like tennis, right, versus physique, you have really solid off seasons. You're not in a deficit. You're eating to perform. Whereas with physique, it's just about getting lean. There's no consideration whatsoever onto the menstrual cycle. I would be shocked. I would honestly take my car keys right now, because I doubt that there is a physique coach on the face of this earth, if their client loses their menstrual cycle, that they go, great, pulling you from this comp, you're no longer healthy anymore. They just wouldn't. They treat it as part and parcel of going through a comp is losing your menstrual cycle. And it's almost like a badge of honor for a lot of women to wear when they're in that intertwined in that physique world of how long they haven't had a cycle for, because they're so lean. So that's really where I see a lot of it wrong, is the fact that it even exists. But really, these coaches aren't even drawing a line in the sand of at what point do we say enough is enough for our clients, because we have to consider that there's not, look, there is, I shouldn't be so finite with what I'm saying, but there's a lot of things that can impact a man's fertility, but there's a lot of decisions that we can make for our female clients which can irreparably damage their fertility. And we don't see those same repercussions for men. So we have to consider as well, is putting our client through this physique prep and then the next one, and having them in this state for 5 years, does this have the potential to impact their fertility long term? Well, first of all, we don't have the research to show either way. And secondly, if we don't have that research, that absence of that research, does that mean we can just go ape shit and do whatever we want? No, we still have to consider that a long-term consequence can come from our action. And for me, I've seen it time and time again where the return to fertility is so difficult for clients after physique comps, where I think that's a big thing, where it's not just about the short-term goal. It's not about the 4-month prep. It's not about just getting that pro card or anything like that. It's about, what do you want to do in your life? What is your long-term goal? Because actually maybe your short-term goals don't actually align with what that long-term ultimate goal is. If you're telling me your long-term ultimate goal is to have kids by 30 and you're 28 and you want to do a comp, sorry, we're not doing a comp. You have to be really realistic about that and think about how long it actually takes to go through the maturation process of your follicles, which is 18 months. And you're telling me you want to do a comp and you want to take that away. So I think that's a big thing where coaches aren't actually thinking about the long-term outcomes for their clients or the long-term desires and goals for those clients when they put them into physique comps. That's not every coach, there will be outliers.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to a lot of coaches who are very compassionate, but also they want to build their reputation. They want to build their influence in the world. And if they want to build their influence in the world, then they have a very honest conversation with their client. And the client says, I'm happy to go all in and do this. But we've also got a lot of girls who are doing bikini comps. And I think coaches know with their hand on heart, look, I've put women through it. They've lost their menstrual. I'm not going to be squeaky clean and say here that I haven't, because I have. I've had those honest conversations, but I've also said, no, we're delaying what we're doing, especially from photo shoots. I mean, I remember working with one lady that dieted down, and for the first time in her life, she loved how she looked and she would not come back up. And these signs were there before we started the prep.
Yeah.
They were there before we started the prep. And I allowed that to happen, and I regret that. And I know she's very happy now, but it took a year because she loved the social media likes. She loved the attention. She was single and she dieted down. And for a year, she was ruined. And she psychologically just wouldn't bring her food back up. And I think that, my question to you is, what should coaches be looking for that would be giving you those telltale signs that I've just spoken about, that would give you the ability to stop and say, it's one female, but you're saving her future by having deeper conversations about what that looks like, as opposed to taking a word as gospel. Sometimes it's important to have these conversations and say, really, what are we looking for from competing? Because I know standing in front of a load of judges is not that fulfilling. The journey was more fulfilling for me than standing in a pair of pants on stage. In fact, my last one, I stood there and I was like, I have no idea why I'm doing it. Now, I'm not talking anti against bodybuilding. I did it for a long time, but it's understanding in your head the reason why you're doing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think social media has been it's been a great thing, and it's connected a lot of people. Like, if you think about how you and I have connected, it was through the power of social media. That's not something that would have happened without it. So I can't completely, poo-poo social media. But unfortunately, social media, if you look at social media in teens, there's no research to show that it positively impacts them. Everything shows that it negatively impacts them. And when you look at what social media does to men and women worldwide, it's just, doing it for the gram isn't a reason for me. I think one of the things that, it's funny, as you were talking about all of that, one of the things that kept popping up in my head was this client that I had who, this was like the red flag, and it was a red flag that I didn't realize, not until it wasn't too late, but I didn't realize it for a long time, because she came to me so unhealthy and so overweight and having abused performance enhancing drugs for a previous comp, where she came in looking not that great, honestly. And it was, I want to be in the best shape of my life. That's what she kept saying. And there was never a time where she was actually happy with the shape she was in. It was never a period where she actually looked at herself and was like, holy shit, today I actually am in the best fucking shape of my life. I actually look fantastic. Look at where I've come from. Every single check-in, every single month where we updated programs, whatever we did, I want to be in the best shape of my life. We do a period where she dieted down, and then the next thing was, I want to be in the best shape of my life. Well, hang on, you're actually in the best shape of your life right now. And that's what happens with a lot of competitors. They go on stage, they get really subjective feedback as to what their physique looks like, and they get fixated on, okay, well, I'm not in the best shape of my life, even though I actually am. So I need to bring up my glutes, I need to bring up my calves, I need to bring up my back. And they just keep getting fixated on this need to be in the best shape of my life for this external reward of whether that's being on stage and given that number one so it can be posted on social media. Because I also am, I think I've probably seen once or twice in my life competitors who aren't on social media. And I know, this conversation might be striking a little bit too hard for some people as well. But I always say, if there was no Instagram and you weren't allowed to post anywhere on social media, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere, you can't post your comp, you can't post your body, you can't post your win. Do you still want to compete? Right. And if it's like, well, no, like I want to be able to share it, I want to be able to post it. And it's like, okay, well, let's have a look at why you're actually wanting to do this. Because, there are going to be people who have a deep internal motivator for competing. when I competed, my motivator was I thought it was a entry into being able to coach people in that world as well. I thought that the validation of those federations and leagues and having a pro card or whatever was what would drive more clients, which it wasn't. And I also wanted to experience what it's like to go through that, to be able to understand my clients when they are going through it. Because it's very easy to be like, oh, just shut up, you're hungry. Whereas when you actually live through that diet and that prep and you're on a week out and you're eating fish and asparagus, it's very different. But, my motivators for that weren't, although it was shared a lot on social media, it wasn't necessarily to post to social media. You might look at my motivators for it and go, they're not valid motivators either, of what it was. But there are some people who have really deep motivators, internal motivators for competing, love the sport and built for it. And I think that's a big thing as well. Like, if you look at basketball, it's not everyone can play basketball. And it's the same thing with bodybuilding. Like, there are some people who their insertions and their physique, even when they're lean, like, it's not a great physique.
I know. If these challenges that are faced, whether or not it is, illness, health conditions, whatever, come from Gen Pop clients, they've got them when they arrive at a coach, or even physique athletes. I've had many females over the years come to me and say, listen, this has started to happen to me. And they go to their health practitioner, and the health practitioner shares their advice and says, this is what I want you to go on, or these are the drugs that I want you to do. And an experienced mind like myself goes, I don't know whether that's right. I don't know whether they've seen like what I've seen, and I'm pretty experienced in this. Is this a challenging question for you? But I'm going to see if you'll answer it for me. Conventional health practitioners, doctors, women are going to see these people. I've been very fortunate to have phenomenal functional medicine practitioners around me over the years, which I've entrusted with the clients that I've worked with. And my question for you is, does our common healthcare fail us in some way? And who do coaches need in their corner that would support them in the decisions that they're trying to, or the conversations they're trying to have with their female clients?
So I preface this by saying that I have a lot of respect for practitioners in the Western med system. If I have a heart attack, if I have a car accident, if my arm is chopped off, I'm not going to a naturopath. I'm going to Western med, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Western med has a place, and it has a place to deal with chronic and acute issues when nothing else has also worked. Like, sometimes you do need a surgery, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing. But unfortunately, a lot of Western med, in my opinion, isn't actually equipped to deal with optimizing health. And they're not. And when you look at how overburdened they are, like, there's reasons for it, right? Like, the public health systems, they're with patients from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. They have to do their certain like upskilling to keep their registration. And then do they have time to like read more? Probably not. But, you can make that excuse for anyone. It's like, well, coaches are out there doing it. But these people aren't, they don't know what to recommend when we're talking about optimizing health. They know how to treat someone who's unwell. They know what medication to give them when they come in with high blood pressure. They know what medication to give them when they come in with reflux, but they don't get to the root cause of it. So they're great for Band-Aid solutions. I am a huge, huge, huge fan of naturopaths. I'm a huge fan of traditional Chinese medicine. These are modalities and practices that have so many years behind them, and now Western med is actually starting to catch up and going, oh, hey, actually, there is a bit of substance to this. It's not to sound, hippy dippy frou-frou, but when you look at herbs, there are a lot of herbs that have helped with a lot of ailments and a lot of things in a lot of different cases. Supplements, we use supplements like No Tomorrow, where we look at like more of the Western supplements of like a B vitamin. Yep. There are a lot of herbs that we find in supplements like fenugreek, which is great for thyroid health and lactation support. So I'm a big fan of having those two people in the corner, but it's with the caveat of they can also be really shit. Like, if you have a shit naturopath, if you have a shit TCM, it doesn't matter that they're a naturopath or a TCM, they're still crap. So it's the same thing as a PT. You can be a PT, but you can be a crappy PT. So are you better off not having one at all? So I think that's a big caveat to what I'm saying there.
And with that, I think what I've found throughout my career is the more informed I am, the better I am able to refer. Because if I go in and I am speaking to a naturopath, here's the deal. A sports massage therapist, there are some really poor ones. When I lay on a bed, I give you 20 minutes and then I'll end it, because I know what tissue is. I know where origins and insertions are. I know directions of fibers. I know my injuries. And if somebody gets on and starts deep tissuing me without asking me about my body and my training, I'll give you 10 minutes and then I'll close the door and say, we're done, because you clearly do not understand the body. And so this kind of comes back to what we talked about earlier, is be informed, right? I mean, have a breadth of information and a baseline. I remember, the really thick book on Ayurvedic medicine, the herbs one, the pink one, but Charles Follicum years ago. Have you got it there? Show me.
I don't have that one, but I have another one.
Yeah. But
that is on menstrual cycles.
That I don't have, and that has done me by 2-3 sizes. But 100%. It's the book. I remember Charles recommended, and I had all these books by the side of me, the Institute of Functional Medicine's Bible, and all these different books and resources. And I think that I wasn't trying to be the expert. I think that's the point that we're here. I'm never trying to be the expert. I'm just trying to be informed. And an informed person could go out and reach out to somebody and go, wow, this hasn't even inspired me to speak to this person. So I don't really want to introduce my clients. So, would you agree that one of the first steps is the information gathered by the coach, and then that would potentially lead you? For me, I remember, do you remember Brian Walsh?
Yes.
The naturopath? I was introduced to Brian Walsh through somebody else. Then I consulted with him. Then I went and did the AFMCP with the Institute of Functional Medicine. And I wasn't doing that to become a functional medicine practitioner. I was just doing that to be informed. So I suppose that, the naivety leads to potentially the wrong connections. And the information gives us the opportunity to ask the right questions and lead to the right people, which is invaluable. Thank you. Now, I am really intrigued because there's the entrepreneurial side as well, right? Because not only do you help women all over the world, but then I'm fascinated as an entrepreneur myself in femtech. I think this is wonderful, and it's so exciting to just watch this and hear about this. But to the women out there, I'm excited to introduce you to your genius idea and concept, like actual product, femtech. What is it?
So femtech, not to be confused with female technology. It's FEMTEK. Very clever. I was proud of that. So femtech is a women's only smart ring. So we look at the entire life cycle of a woman in our user experience, and menstrual health is at the focus of it. So we're looking from prepubescent to menopausal and everything in between. And depending on your goal and life stage and hormonal condition, all of that dictates a different user experience. It's the same way that I wouldn't treat a client who is wanting to get pregnant the same way that I would treat a client who has no cycle. They're two different use cases and need two different ways to be supported. So that's really what it is in the elevator pitch version of it. It's a smart ring that's only worn at night that syncs with its cycle tracking app in the morning. So the big thing is that a lot of these period apps as well that women use are just so inaccurate and providing them with such false information because they lack the biometrics to give them correct algorithms and recommendations. So femtech was born from me trying to help my clients, not having anything that I could give them. So I was like, yeah, I'll just make something. And it's not just I'll make something. It's turned out to be a lot harder. But that's been almost 4 years in the making now. And we launched at the start of this year, and we're actually shipping orders out at the moment. So I took a little break from packing orders to jump on with you.
Thank you. Femtech, to a woman that's here listening to this right now, a female coach, their clients, because, it's such a valuable tool. For a coach that says, I listened to a great podcast with Olivia Orchowski this morning. She was talking about femtech. It's a ring worn by women to help them understand or regulate their menstrual cycle, with the benefit of doing what? What would the coach say to their client?
The benefit is that you now get to actually start in a place where you're healthy, where you get to collate information and start and start your own journey of cycle literacy, where, just like you were saying, it's so important for the coach to have all of these bits of information so they can refer out. You as a woman, it's actually important for you to have a concept of your cycle, what your normal is, what you may actually think is normal, but is really just not. And it's creating cycle and body literacy. And at its very least, it is giving you accurate ovulation insights because we're looking at temperature. There's a huge trend at the moment of training with the menstrual cycle, which is awesome. And one of the awesome things about what we do with Femtech is all of the data is private. It's all de-identified. We know that women with PCOS has resulted with, this result in terms of what she's tracked, but we don't know who that woman is. And we get to also push the needle forward on women's research and what we will see with women in the future and the commonalities of experiences. Because right now, women's research is just a shitty black hole with so many gaps. And when research is done, it's done really poorly because you have researchers conducting these studies who don't have any concept of the menstrual cycle whatsoever. So they'll mislabel things in the study and not think twice about it.
Wow. Now, Femtech, entrepreneurial vision, teaching, inspiring, educating, being influential in your space. The word influence means a lot to me in terms of my conscious efforts to help people find out who I am and share what my message is with the world. Standing in front of 500 women, what is your key message to women?
The key message that I want a lot of women to understand, and I think a lot of women echo this sentiment, is that we're not tiny men, and that's okay. It's actually okay not to try and push yourself to the level that men push themselves, because we're just two completely different sexes in terms of how we recover, what we can get away with, what a good amount of sleep for a man is versus a appropriate amount of sleep for a woman. They're two different things. So it's actually okay to fall into the fact that you have a menstrual cycle. If you learn to work with it and accept it as opposed to hate it and dread it, it can actually give back a huge quality of your life.
What does success mean to you and the relationship that you have with deserving to earn money as you progress through your career? Something that that's really important for me to discuss with each of my guests is the concept that if we do great work, we deserve to be paid well for it. And I feel in the fitness industry, there's so many coaches who either don't reward themselves and get to a stage where they blame the fitness industry. But what does success mean to you on your own relationship with money as you've developed through your career?
As you go, because I think they're two different things, right? In terms of success with Femtech and success that I've had with the health and fitness industry and clients, I kind of see them as two different benchmarks, I guess. Success to me with clients was obviously we all want financial security. There's, whether that's Femtech or clients or whatever, money does bring happiness to a degree. Anyone who says otherwise just has a shit ton of money and doesn't know what to do with it, because money provides security, money provides a de-stressed environment, money provides a roof over your head. It does provide happiness and security. So a big thing for me when I was coaching clients was I was always looking at my own benchmarks of, is my lowest that I'm making this year still more than my highest that I was making last year? And what have I done in between in terms of education to command a higher price? Or, because at the end of the day, what would have taken me 3 months to figure out with a client 2 years ago takes me a whole of 30 seconds to figure out now. And then in terms of Femtech, it's a health tech company where we're talking about wearables, manufacturing, software. It's a lot. It's a huge capital cost that has gone into this. There's been a lot of investors that have put money into this as well. So the benchmarks that we're talking about with Femtech is we're talking about a company that scales, I don't want to say infinitely, but significantly over the next few years, where we have really key metrics where we want to be doubling our revenue, bringing in additional revenue what can we bring in to support the product we have, and how can we build out that ecosystem to really scale this business. So I looked at them in two different ways, where I had two different benchmarks. For coaching, it was, am I making more than I was last year? Am I able to help people faster? Am I smarter? Can I get to that end result with them sooner? Great. And with Femtech, it's really aggressive product sales and benchmarks that we're looking at.
Would you be in the position you are today, being able to launch a global product and have the networks and build the investment into the company without the work that you've done to become who you are today?
No, because Femtech wasn't something that I wanted to do. I never had a dream of creating a wearable company. I never had a dream of working in a startup or anything like that. It's something that happened as a result of the fact that I was working hard with my clients and found a problem and a pain point for them. I remember someone asking me, they wanted to build a wearable or something or get into the health tech space. And they were like, do you have any advice? And I was like, well, no, because I found a problem with my clients who I loved working with and loved helping, and wanted to create something for them, and was naive in thinking how hard it would be and how much effort would be going into it. So had I not gone through all of that history, had I not gone through the modeling and the unhealthy girls and the personal training and the Gen Pop and the comps and all of that, it wouldn't have led to this point at all.
Wonderful. My last question for you. What is mastery to you?
You're saving the tough one for the end. I think mastery, there's a few ways I think I would look at it, and I would kind of tend to look at it as individual aspects of my life where, am I mastering my personal relationships? Am I mastering my work ethic and my ability to show up to work and provide a good result? Am I mastering looking after myself? Which I think those are the big pillars for me, because they do work in with my own value systems. So that's really what mastery is. I think it's knowing what your value systems and what is actually important to you, and are you showing up in the best version of yourself and best way you can for those value systems. So I don't think it's any one thing. At the moment, I don't feel like I'm mastering my own training and health, because Femtech is just commanding so much of my time and energy. But I know that that's something that over the next few months, I'll be able to shift back, where I will be able to start to master that again.
I love that. Olivia, the time has flown by.
It has, hasn't it?
It's absolutely flown by. And do you know what? I feel so grateful to have met you throughout my career. And I feel grateful that you've given your time today, because one of the things with the Mastery Podcast for me is to be in the position where my history has put me in a position where people do want to come and have a conversation with me, so that I can give back to the guy that was 18, wondering, what the hell am I doing? Trying to think about becoming something in an industry, or 23 when I started, should I say. So I just want to thank you for sharing your knowledge, wisdom, and expertise with everybody. I know with certainty this podcast is going to be a game changer for not just females that are listening to this. If you're listening to this at this stage as you're a male, I thank you, because you are working with female clients, and you owe your female clients, you owe it to them to know what you're doing. Olivia, how can anybody find you, learn from you, and especially also find Femtech?
So the easiest way to find me is on Instagram. So Olivia Orchowski, and then Femtech is fem.tek on Instagram. In terms of working with me at the moment, I actually don't work with clients anymore, and any of the consultancy that I do is super, super limited because my workload is just insane. So the only way to actually work with me is through the CCA, which sounds like a really douchey plug, but I promise not. But that's just the only way to work with me at the moment. The most recent lecture that we posted on my stories, I had so many women reaching out being like, where can I view this lecture? I was like, This is the only place at the moment. So,
and to be honest, Olivia, the price that we charge for people to be a part of our complete coaching academy, and this is a bit of it is a bit of a shameless plug. If you're a PT or an online coach listening to this right now, Olivia is our one of our head educators in the Complete Coaching Academy, where we teach coaches the science and theory and practical aspects of becoming a great coach and highly skilled coach. And Olivia runs the female physiology section in there. So you can find that through any of the links with myself or Olivia. But I just wanted to say, Olivia, thank you for your time. I know this is going to be an episode that's going to be listened to by so many coaches around the world, and also give them the opportunity to become more empowered, educated, and influence the women that have, this episode will be influential in helping coaches help more women. And I think that's just so powerful. So I thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you. It's always a pleasure to chat to you.
Thank you.